Arnar Gunnar Gunnarsson walked into the post-match press conference with the look of a man who had just seen exactly what he had expected to see. Not defeated, not broken, not looking for excuses, just honest. Strikingly, almost disarmingly honest. And that honesty, more than anything else that happened across those 90 minutes inside one of the most iconic stadiums in American college football, became the real story of the night. Because what the Iceland head coach said before the match, what he said during it, and then what he said after standing in front of those same microphones with the scoreboard already telling the full story. Those three conversations painted a picture of Argentina in 2026 that no tactical analysis, no statistic, no highlight package could have painted better. But let us start at the beginning. Let us start with the venue, because the venue alone deserves a moment. The Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, Alabama, one of the genuine giants of college football in the United States, built to hold over 87,000 people, opened its gates on a warm summer night not for a game of American football, but for a match between the reigning world champions and a nation of fewer than 400,000 people that had not even qualified for the tournament that begins in just days. 87,000 seats. A stadium constructed for a different sport entirely. And it was full, or as close to full as you are going to get for a pre-tournament friendly that on paper should have had a predictable result written all over it before a single ball was kicked. That tells you something. That tells you everything, actually, because the reason those seats were filled, the reason people drove hours to sit in an American football stadium on a Tuesday night to watch a friendly match involving a team that does not even have a domestic professional league, was one man. One name. One number on the back of a jersey that the entire sport of football, regardless of nationality, regardless of language, regardless of how closely you follow the game, recognizes the moment it appears. Lionel Messi was back. After missing the previous friendly against Honduras with a muscular issue that had sent a quiet wave of anxiety through every Argentina supporter on the planet, the captain was declared fit, named in the squad, and was going to play. Not from the start, as Lionel Scaloni managed him carefully with the tournament on the horizon, but he was going to play. And that was enough. That was more than enough. Those 87,000 people in Auburn did not need him to play 90 minutes to feel like they had gotten their money's worth. They needed to see him walk onto that pitch. They needed to see that familiar silhouette, that unhurried walk, that way he has of carrying himself when he is about to do something that you are going to talk about for a long time afterward. And he gave them everything they came for, and then some. But before we get to Messi, we need to talk about Arnar Gunnar Gunnarsson, because without understanding what the Iceland coach said, and how he said it, and the particular weight his words carried both before and after the final whistle, you cannot fully appreciate what happened in Auburn that night. Gunnarsson is Icelandic, a former professional player who took charge of the Icelandic national team in January of the year prior. Iceland had not qualified for the 2026 World Cup. They came to this match as invited guests, as opponents chosen to give the world champions a genuine physical test in the final days of their preparation. And the coach arrived at his pre-match press conference with a clarity of purpose that stood out immediately. He was not going to pretend this was going to be a competitive match in the way a knockout game is competitive. He was not going to manufacture false confidence for the cameras. He said what he believed, and what he believed was striking in its directness. He said Argentina is the best team in the world. He did not qualify it. He did not soften it. He did not say something like they are one of the best or they are among the favorites. He said it plainly, the way you say something when you have already had the internal argument with yourself and settled it long ago. And then he went further. He said, And this is the sentence that generated headlines across Europe and across large parts of the Americas in the hours that followed. I think when you are world champions, you know everything about the game. 7 words that landed differently depending on how you read them. On the surface, a straightforward acknowledgement of Argentina's quality, of what winning a World Cup means in terms of mentality and experience and knowledge of how to win at the very highest level. But underneath that surface, something more revealing. Because Gunnarsson was not delivering a diplomatic quote designed to generate goodwill. He was telling you exactly how his players were going to feel walking onto that pitch. Exactly the mental weight that his team was going to carry from the first whistle to the last. He also spoke about Iceland's qualifying campaign with a frankness that is genuinely rare in international football, where coaches almost universally find ways to explain elimination without quite admitting failure. Gunnarsson did not do that. He looked at the journalists in that room, and he said plainly that his team had not deserved to advance. That there had been too many mistakes, too many details left unattended, too many moments where the quality required to reach a World Cup had simply not been there. He said the general feeling now is positive, that they are competitive against strong sides, that they will keep going and try to absorb everything better, and that, in its own way, was more interesting than the compliment he had paid Argentina, because it told you the kind of coach Gunnarsson is. He is not someone who is in this for the press conference. He is in it for the result, for the long game, for what his team becomes after nights like this one. And then the match began. Argentina's starting lineup was not the team that Scaloni is going to send out in Kansas City against Algeria on the 16th of June. This was a preparation match, the last one before the tournament, and the coach used it accordingly, managing minutes, managing fitness, keeping the players who are absolutely certain to start the opening game fresh and protected. But even without Messi in the starting 11, even without Julian Alvarez, who was still working his way back from injury, even with Emiliano Martinez resting in the stands rather than standing between the posts, what Argentina produced in that first half was a demonstration of the depth that this squad carries. The first goal arrived in the 7th minute. Valentin Barco, the young left-back who has been pushing for a place in this squad with everything he has, received a cross from Lo Celso after a sequence of passes that moved with the kind of rhythm that is difficult to disrupt when a team has been playing together and trusting each other for years. The ball bounced inside the area, defenders scrambling, and Barco waited. He waited for the exact moment when the ball sat right, and then he hit it on the volley from outside the box. It went in off the post. A goal that belonged in a highlights package. A first international goal for the young defender, and a statement from a player who understood that opportunities like this one do not come twice. The stadium, already warm and loud, lit up. For Iceland, those first 45 minutes were about surviving without being destroyed. They pressed when they could. They tried to make Argentina uncomfortable in the first phase of build-up. They showed the physicality and the organization that Scandinavian football has developed into a genuine identity over the past decade. But the gap in individual quality was visible, felt, and acknowledged by their own coach afterward without any prompting. When you are facing players who play for the biggest clubs in the world every week at the highest level of club football, organization and hard work will get you through some moments, but not all of them. Then the second half started, and Scaloni made his changes, and the atmosphere inside Jordan-Hare shifted. Because the substitutes coming on were not backup players warming cold legs. They were Rodrigo de Paul, whose engine in the middle of the park is one of the constants of this Argentina team. A player who covers every blade of grass and never stops competing. They were Enzo Fernandez, the young midfielder who has established himself as one of the genuinely elite players in the world at his position. They were Lautaro Martinez, the striker whose connection with Messi has been one of the most productive partnerships in international football over the past several years. And they were Lionel Messi. The stadium reacted before he had kicked a ball. The reaction started the moment it became clear he was warming up, intensified when he was confirmed as one of the substitutes coming on, and reached something close to pandemonium when he walked to the edge of the technical area, pulled on the captain's armband, and stepped onto the pitch. 87,000 people in Alabama for a friendly, reacting like they were watching something they would tell their children about. And in a way, they were. 21 minutes. That was all Messi got. 21 minutes of playing time, which under normal circumstances would seem like almost nothing. A substitute's cameo. A brief appearance to keep the legs moving before the real work begins. But this is Lionel Messi, and the concept of a brief appearance does not apply to him in the same way it applies to other footballers, because what he does in his time on the pitch is not measured in minutes. With his first meaningful touch of the ball, he saw a run that no one else had seen, played a pass that arrived exactly where it needed to arrive at exactly the moment it needed to arrive, and put Lautaro Martinez clean through on goal. The Icelandic goalkeeper came out to meet him, made the save, but in doing so made contact with the striker. The referee pointed to the spot. Penalty? And Messi walked over to take it with the exact same calm he always has. The calm that looks like a man doing something he has done 10,000 times and will do 10,000 times more, except that the rest of us know he will not. The rest of us know that these moments are becoming numbered in a way they never used to be. He put it away. 2-0. And in doing so he became the oldest scorer in the history of the Argentine national team. Another record. As if the list were not already so long that it stopped feeling like a list and started feeling like a different category entirely. A category with one member. The third goal arrived 3 minutes from time. A swift counterattack that Thiago Almada finished with the kind of cool confidence that tells you a young player has arrived, that the moment is not too big, that he belongs. 3-0. Full time. Preparation complete. And then Arnar Gunnar Gunnarsson walked back into the press conference room. The same man who hours earlier had said that world champions know everything about the game now stood in front of those microphones with a scoreboard behind him and an analysis in his head that had been sharpened and tested and verified across 90 minutes of actual competition. And he did not retreat from what he had said. He did not try to find face-saving explanations. He said Argentina had been superior in every line. He said Iceland had tried to press high when the opportunity was there, but that the quality of the opponent had ultimately been the deciding factor. He said it openly, as a coach who had gone into this match wanting to learn and had learned, even if the lesson was expensive. And then he talked about Messi again. He talked about what happened when Messi entered the pitch, not in vague terms, not in the generic language that coaches use when they talk about great players as a courtesy. He talked about the specific change that occurred in the match, the way the game reorganized itself around the Argentine captain the moment he stepped on, the way Iceland's defensive structure, which had been reasonably disciplined and organized, suddenly had to process an entirely different set of problems. And in talking about that, he made clear something that his earlier comments had already suggested, but not quite stated. That everything he had said before the match, about Argentina being the best team in the world, about world champions knowing everything about the game, had always been about one person in particular. It had always been about Messi. Because you cannot talk about Argentina without arriving at Messi. The two things are intertwined in a way that the sport has not figured out how to separate, and perhaps does not need to, because in a matter of weeks, this particular version of that connection will belong entirely to history. At the very end of the post-match press conference, Gunnarsson allowed himself one final moment of genuine feeling that cut through everything else he had said, both before and after the match. He looked at the journalists in front of him, paused for a moment, and with something close to a smile said that it is unfair to have to face Messi. That he makes everything look easy, that there is no doubt in his mind that Messi will have a great World Cup. And then he said, simply, that Messi deserves it. The coach of a team that had just lost 3-0, a team that did not even qualify for the tournament, standing in a press conference room in Alabama, talking about what Lionel Messi deserves. That is what this match produced. That is the real story of that night in Auburn, not the scoreline, not the records broken, not even the goals themselves, but the image of a rival coach reaching across the competitive divide to say something that every person in that stadium, every person watching around the world, already knows but rarely hears stated quite so clearly by someone in that position. And when you step back and look at the full picture of what happened across those hours, from Gunnarsson's pre-match press conference through the 90 minutes and the post-match analysis, a pattern becomes visible. The Iceland coach built his entire public narrative around Argentina, and every single branch of that narrative led back to the same person. He talked about world champions knowing everything about the game, and he meant Messi. He talked about the superior quality in every line, and he meant the team that Messi leads. He talked about the change that came when a substitute entered the pitch, and he meant the one substitute who can change a match by simply existing on the pitch. Every road in his analysis went to the same place. It is a paradox wrapped inside a compliment, because the most revealing thing an opposing coach can do is show you what occupies his thoughts. And what occupied Gunnarsson's thoughts from the moment this fixture was announced to the moment he left that room after the final whistle was not Argentina in the abstract. It was one man wearing the number 10. There are players who win matches. There are players who win championships. And then there is one player in this entire generation of football, perhaps in the entire history of the sport, who makes opposing coaches sound like supporters the moment they step in front of a microphone and are asked to describe what facing him feels like. That is a specific kind of greatness that is almost impossible to manufacture and completely impossible to fake. It comes from decades of doing this at the highest level, from never letting the standard drop. From arriving at a pre-tournament friendly in Alabama at 38 years old and still making the post-match conversation about yourself with 21 minutes of football. The world champions begin their defense of the title on June 16th at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, facing Algeria in what will be Messi's first match at what is almost certainly his final World Cup. Then Austria on the 22nd. Then Jordan on the 27th. A group that Argentina should navigate successfully, but in a tournament, nothing is guaranteed, nothing is given, and the margins can collapse without warning. After the group stage, every match is a final. Every match is an elimination. Every match is, potentially, the last time we watch this particular version of this particular player in this particular competition. Gunnarsson said it is unfair to face Messi. He is right. But it is also, in a strange and beautiful way, a privilege, because the players who line up against Argentina in the coming weeks are the last opponents Messi will ever have in a World Cup. They are part of the story whether they want to be or not. They are part of the ending of something that will not happen again. When the Argentine national anthem plays in Kansas City, when Messi stands with his teammates and lifts his eyes toward the upper tiers of Arrowhead, something in the air will shift. Anyone who was in Qatar in 2022, anyone who watched those matches, knows the feeling. It is not excitement exactly, though excitement is part of it. It is something closer to awareness, a recognition that what you are watching is not just a football match, but a chapter in a story that is almost finished, and that you are among the last people who will ever get to experience it live. There are players who leave the sport quietly. They retire and the game continues, and eventually, gradually, their absence becomes the new normal. And then there are players who leave the way Messi is about to leave, surrounded by the biggest tournament in the world, with rivals coaches giving press conferences that turn into testimonials, with 87,000 people filling a stadium in Alabama just to watch him take a penalty with 20 minutes left in a pre-tournament friendly. That kind of departure does not happen often. In fact, it has never quite happened like this before. The Iceland coach came to Auburn to learn, to test his team, to see where they stand against the very best. He came away with a defeat, with data, with the experience of watching his defensive structure reorganized by a single entry from the substitutes bench. And he came away with a sentence that will follow him for a long time. A sentence he delivered not because anyone asked for it, but because it was simply true. It is unfair to face Messi. He deserves a great World Cup. What comes next is history. The kind that happens once, that does not repeat, that you either witness or you read about later in a book. Argentina, the world champions, are ready. The captain is fit. The tournament begins in days, and everything that happens between now and the final whistle of the last match this squad plays in 2026 is going to be remembered. We will be here for all of it. Every match, every goal, every press conference from a rival coach who comes in with a game plan and leaves with a story about Messi. That is what this World Cup is going to be. That is what the Iceland coach understood before the match, confirmed during it, and said out loud after it. The world already knows. And in a few days, Kansas City is going to feel it too. The defending champions are ready. The last dance is about to begin.